Hello and welcome to another episode of Two Guys and a Chainsaw. I'm Todd.
And I'm Craig.
Today's film comes to you straight from Netflix. If you like it, you can check it out now. It is the 2014 film Clown. Just in time for, I think we have a new version of It coming out soon, which to me is like the quintessential clown, evil clown movie. At least it scared the heck out of me when we were in middle school. That was, a lot of people don't...
Me too.
Yeah, right. And a lot of people don't realize, at least today, that it was a TV movie. It was like a TV miniseries.
Mm-hmm.
Remember that?
Yep.
Yeah, I remember being in like 8th grade, and I mean, it's clear as day, coming into band class, and our teacher, like the first thing out of her mouth, our director was, "Did any of you see It last night?" And we were like, "Yeah." And she's like, "That scared the heck out of me." Imagine this woman talking to 8th graders about how It scared the heck out of her. She must have she must have had a fear of clowns. I have to say, as a guy who kind of liked doing magic growing up, I was kind of into that scene. One of my first jobs actually that I ever got paid for was doing magic shows for birthday parties and events and things. But the one thing that I steered clear of, even though I was into magic, I took up juggling a little bit. I was twisting balloon animals last week for the kindergarten that I was principal for. I don't, except when I was a kid, one Halloween that I have photographic evidence of, I've never been fond of dressing up as a clown, like getting that white makeup on, kind of doing the whole clown thing, just was never my thing. And that being said, I've also never, had a fear of clowns. I think that's a fairly recent thing. And maybe don't get me wrong, there are always people who have been afraid of clowns. I mean, there's a word for it. And, it's like a fear of spiders. You can have a fear of about anything. And if you're a young enough kid and this guy in makeup is coming and, kind of in your face and doing whatever, it's understandable that it'd be kind of frightening. But for so many centuries, clowns have just been fun and happy for the most part for most people.
Right.
It seems like lately, just within the last few decades, it's been, I have to say, kind of trendy to say that clowns are evil and that you hate clowns and that you're afraid of clowns.
I do know what you mean, and I think it really was kind of the turning point there. And then, I don't know, I'm sure that there had been clown stuff before that. I don't remember when Killer Clowns from Outer Space came out, but even that, I mean, it was kind of scary, but it was goofball too.
Goofy, yeah.
But ever since It, I think clowns have kind of gotten a bad rap. And, even recently in the last few years, there have been all these scary clown sightings, like in real life. Like, I don't know who these people are who are dressing up as clowns and going around scaring people. But I guess the real clowns in the clown industry are kind of struggling. They're struggling because there's not the demand for them there once was. I mean, when we were little kids, clowns you'd see them at the circus. There was Ronald McDonald. They were kind of a cute, fun kid thing. But I think that's kind of shifted. I imagine it'll probably shift back at some time, but I guess we'll just have to wait and see. This movie's not going to do it any favors, do the clowns any favors.
Absolutely not. This movie takes a whole different take on the clown thing, and I have to say that's the one thing that I really liked about this movie. I'm pretty mixed on it, actually. I'll just say it right up front. I did enjoy it at parts. I felt like at times it got a little draggy, and I felt like tonally it didn't really know where it wanted to be, and that's the biggest. I mean, otherwise it's a pretty gutsy movie. It was really willing to go a lot of places that a lot of movies aren't willing to go, and take some risks. And for that, I've got to give it some credit. But at the end of the day, I was just a little mixed about this film. But I do have to say that the concept is kind of unique and cool. It's not super unique in that we are getting a lot of these sort of retconned origin stories, right? We did Sint and a couple different Santa Claus movies where they try to kind of make it seem like happy-go-lucky clowns actually had a sinister origin.
Right.
Yeah, so that was kind of interesting, I thought. That's something I hadn't seen before anyway.
Well, the history of the movie, I think, is just as interesting as the movie itself. I mean, it started out, I guess, as the director made a fake trailer for this movie Clown that he hadn't made, and he put it up on YouTube. in the fake trailer, it said from the master of horror, Eli Roth. And of course, Eli Roth didn't have anything to do with it at all. But somehow Roth got wind of it, and he was impressed that they were ballsy enough to put his name on it. And so he ended up, being one of the producers on it. And then it got made. They shot it in 2012. And completed it, and then it just sat around for a long time. Like, I guess it got released in Europe and I don't know where else. So then it finally got a limited theatrical release in 2014, and then went straight to disc. So I don't know why it was shelved for so long. I guess they just couldn't find a distributor, and that's kind of strange to me, especially since, like we said, there's kind of been this hype around clowns, and there was hype around this movie. I mean, I remember reading about it when it was being made, and I kept seeing posts online about how, it was finally going to be released. It was finally going to be released, and it just kept getting pushed back. And eventually, though, I guess it found its distributor, and we get it. And it's just kind of strange to me that it took so long to come out, because it's not bad. I mean, it's a pretty well made movie. The director, John Watts. I didn't recognize a lot of the stuff that he had done in the past, but he just directed the new Marvel movie, Spider-Man Homecoming, that's not even out yet. The directing is pretty good. And the acting, I thought, was actually pretty good. It was a little bit subtle. It wasn't over the top too much. I mean, it's a killer clown movie, so of course it's over the top, but it has a quality to it. You're right. I agree with you entirely that I'm kind of mixed on it too, because it does seem like it drags a little bit. It's a scary movie, but I think that in hindsight, thinking about it, and after I read some about it, it's really kind of more interesting as a personal journey of the main character. And I'll be interested to talk about that as we get there. But tell us what it's about.
Okay, so basically, it's about this family. We have May and Kent, husband and wife and husband, and it opens up at a birthday party. And we get a lot of information thrown at us at the beginning, which is a nice little setup. Jack, their son, is having a birthday party, and it's a clown-themed birthday party, and he's really excited about the clown that's going to show up. In the meantime, May is talking with her friend Denise. And she and Denise are chatting, and May kind of lets it slip that she's pregnant, but she hasn't really told anybody else yet. And particularly, she hasn't told Kent yet. She gets a call from the company, the clown company that she had hired to send a clown there. And they say they can't bring their clown. So she calls Kent, her husband, and says they're not going to send a clown. Now, Kent, we find out, is a realtor. He is fixing up a house here that's getting ready to be sold. And he's in the midst of this when he gets this phone call. So he gets this call on his cell phone, and I think she calls from her land phone, which it was just a little weird in this movie.
I didn't even notice.
Yeah, there's a lot of... She's got a landline and an answering machine. It's so bizarre. Like, even in 20... I mean, the movie did take a while to come out, but it was like, we're talking 2013 was when it was shot.
Right.
That was the first thing that I was like, what the heck? But anyway, yeah, so he's like, don't worry, I'll figure something out. And he's kind of vague about it. He hangs it up. And it just so happens, I guess, in this house that he's in, the previous owner left some stuff. We later find out this was a guy had died in this house, and so he just kind of went up and left. And so he goes hunting around, I guess, in the clothing, and lo and behold, lucky him, he finds this chest in the basement amongst the things, and it's monogrammed, and he opens it up, and it looks like an old chest, and what is inside but a clown suit? There's a clown suit.
Yeah.
There's a wig and a nose.
As luck would have it. I mean, there are so many, big, like, loose ends in this movie, and this is just one of the first ones. Like, first of all, what are the odds that there would be a clown suit in this house? And beyond that, why would you even think to look? Like, I'll just look just in case there is a clown suit. Like,
yeah. Well, of course, you'd get on your cell phone and you'd call a costume shop nearby. That's exactly what you would do.
Right. Oh, man. But whatever, he finds this clown suit and he puts it on and he goes and he saves the day.
Oh, and
he's the clown at the kids' party.
It is the crappiest clown suit too. Like, I'm sorry, but if I had come across that clown suit and that outfit, first of all, I wouldn't have wanted to put it on. It looks musty and old and disgusting. The suit itself is bizarre. You get kind of close up looks on it, and this kind of gets explained later on, but if you had come across this thing, it looks like a clown suit made out of like patchwork snakeskin or something. And of course,
scaly.
Yeah, it's scaly, right? And there's this kind of dark little nose, I guess, that's, I don't know, whatever. And then this, again, why would you put this old, musty, nasty looking wig on your head? Who knows? I would have called the costume shop anyway at this point.
Right, yeah.
But yeah, you're right. He puts it on. He shows up at the party as Dumbo the Clown. And, of course, I think his kid realizes it's, he's old enough to realize that it's his dad, but he doesn't care, and they all have fun. And
right.
It's actually a really cute moment. I really liked this bit. I thought this is a nice little family. This is a cool guy. At first I wondered if we were getting the dad who's too busy to pay attention and work things out, who's always failing his son kind of trope. But no, he follows through with them and puts on this musty clown suit and does his clown act and everything. And then I thought we were going to get a little bit of clown sex.
Yeah.
There's a zipper.
Slipped right on.
I have big news for you.
Oh, yeah? Mm-hmm. Didn't know it was my birthday. What?
This might be just a little too weird.
Come on. Make a little clown biggie.
I was like, whoa, this movie's
and I think I think we would have gotten some clown sex, but they couldn't figure out how to get the costume off, which kind of sets up the movie. And so she goes off to bed and he falls asleep on the couch and wakes up in the morning still in the clown suit, and he can't get the wig and the nose off, and he can't find the zipper for the clown suit, and so he's stuck in this clown suit. And so he has to take his kid to school and go to work in this clown suit.
He can't even really wash off the face paint either, which right. Begged the question: was he using old nasty grease paint from that that case? Oh, how stupid!
Well, and again, why doesn't he or his wife think it's more strange that he can't get this off? Like,
yeah,
I would be freaking out, like he says at some point that he didn't even use any adhesive or anything. So I would have been more freaked out, but the wife sends him off to take the kid to school. He takes the kid to school. He goes to his work site and his workers are like, "Why are you in a clown suit?" And he just kind of throws his hands up and says, "Well, don't you have kids?" And they just kind of laugh at him. He goes off to the bathroom and he's trying to get this suit off and he can't get it off. And he's so dumb. He takes a box cutter and sticks it under the sleeve right at his wrist and is like trying with force to rip it open. And he completely slits his wrist and blood starts squirting everywhere. And I'm thinking, my God, you better get to the hospital. But he just put some toilet paper on it, like no big deal.
It made no sense.
No. And then on top of that, then he goes out and gets like a buzz saw and sticks the buzz saw down his collar and turns it on and it breaks the blade. I'm like, God, he's so dumb.
Yeah. He even says,
you are going to kill yourself.
This is a really bad idea. But he does it anyway. It's... I had to roll my eyes at that whole section. I thought, this guy should just be going to the hospital. I mean, wouldn't that be what you would do? Just go to the freaking hospital. And I probably wrote that down 3 times while I was making this notes for this movie. Like, go to the hospital. Yeah,
but then he goes home and he still can't get anything off. And so his wife takes him into the bathroom and she's like a dental assistant or something. So she pulls out her dental equipment and she takes like the forceps and grabs onto his nose and starts pulling, and it hurts. Like, he's clearly in pain. This hurts. And she's like, well, I'm just going to do this. And she rips it off and rips the tip of his nose off, and it falls on the floor and the dog eats it, which is gross. But you also know that can't be good. There's something wrong with this suit. Can't be good that the dog eats it. And then, like you said, it gets a little bit long. I feel like if we wanted to, I don't know how detailed we want to get into it, but if we wanted to, we could really just kind of gloss over the most of the plot, because for the next hour, it's just him slowly transforming. And you realize that this costume is transforming him in some way. He's becoming this clown, and it's not just any clown. It's an evil clown. The wig has become his actual hair. His skin has actually turned the colors of the makeup. And it just progresses kind of slowly from there.
Yeah. And, this was I was looking at this and I was thinking, okay, so this is kind of like The Fly, right? I mean, we're seeing this guy who, it's kind of tragic. I mean, through really no fault of his own. This is, I guess you could call it a cursed item type movie. But in a lot of times with these cursed item type movies, the person was doing something they shouldn't, right? At the very least, they robbed the mummy's tomb and they were warned about the curse, but they took the thing anyway, and so they're paying the price. And in this case, it's more like The Fly. It's just this guy was trying to do something good and something nice, and now he's going to pay for it because of this cursed item, this ancient evil. And so at this point in the movie, I thought, okay, this is where this is going, and it's really pretty tragic. But at the same time, it's interjecting quite a bit of humor in there, at spots.
Right.
And I can't really recall any specific things, but there are parts that you'll just kind of laugh at and chuckle or groan. And that's where it started to feel, I don't know, at times it was trying to be kind of sinister and really spooky and scary, and other times it was trying to poke fun and say, hey, look, you're still only watching a movie about a killer clown. It can't be that serious.
Right. Yeah, and I feel like it was a little uneven in that regard. Like, I couldn't really tell which way it was trying to go. Like, because it doesn't really play for the humor a lot. And you do really feel sympathy for this character. The guy, Kent, is played by an actor named Andy Powers, who is just I don't know, I'm sure he's a very good-looking guy. He's a Hollywood actor, but, they kind of play down his looks. They kind of make him very much an everyman here. And he plays it really well. He plays an everyman really well. And so you feel for him. At first, you feel bad that this is happening to him. But it just seems kind of more like a nuisance, an annoyance. Like, how am I going to solve this problem? And as the story progresses and you see him really kind of spiraling downwards, then you really start to feel bad for the guy. When he realizes he can't get the stuff off, he does some research, and he finds out that the guy who died in the house had a brother. The way that he finds that out is he goes back and he finds, I don't remember. Anyway, he does some research, and
he goes to a costume shop, like a random costume shop.
I don't know. It looks old. It smells weird.
Come on. Anything else, please?
I don't know, man. We sell Halloween costumes and cheap stuff. Not like that.
Okay, but who does?
There's like a lot. They're in here.
And she opens up the yellow pages, which, again, I'm thinking this is 2013, and this 20-something-year-old clerk is opening up the yellow pages for this guy.
Yeah.
Anyway, she flips it open, and he just, it's like she flips to one page and the next, and he, looks, and he points at it, and he's like, that one, right there. And I really don't know why. Was it because of the initials on the...
It was the name. The owner of the house's name had been Carlson, and he finds this place called Carlson's Costumes.
Oh, that's it. Okay.
And so he calls this Carlson Costumes, and
I'm calling about a clown costume I think might belong to you. It was found in Martin Carlson's basement.
Where's Marty?
Oh, I'm sorry. Martin Carlson passed away. I'm the real estate agent handling the...
Whatever you do, don't touch that costume. You understand? Stay away from it. Are you still in the house? I'll be over as soon as I can. But don't touch that costume, please.
I'm wearing it.
all of a sudden the guy's like, that's fine. Just be careful. It's old and fragile. Come to my warehouse and we'll get that thing off you. And so he goes to this guy's warehouse, and this guy, Carlson, is played by Peter Stormare, who's been in a lot of things. Right now, he's currently one of the stars of Neil Gaiman's American Gods. But I totally recognize this guy from a lot of stuff. He's kind of this scary, big guy. But he seems nice at first. And he offers Kent some tea, and he starts telling him, he says, this costume, it's an old traditional costume from Nordic regions. And he says, but people don't know what the real origin of clowns are. And then he kind of gives that backstory that you were talking about, how like it's kind of retconning clown origins. And I have no idea if any of this has any grounding in reality.
It's got no grounding in reality. It's always the same, too, in these retcon things. Kind of like our Santa Claus thing, right? Santa Claus was this big, evil, mean, possibly a supernatural kind of creature that actually did the opposite of what he does today, right? He's not a jolly guy who loves kids. He went around murdering kids. And it's the same thing with the clowns. Right. There's some demon. And I didn't really get that either, to be honest, because, and maybe you can help me out here, but his explanation is that there's this demon that lived in the woods, and it was called the Cloyne, and it would lure children, but eventually the residents learned that they could keep him appeased by feeding him 5 children every year. They had to basically sacrifice 5 kids a year, once for each of the months in winter, right? Which, Scandinavian winter, anyway.
Yeah, he lived, I think, he lived at the top of a mountain, and that's why his face was white, but his nose was red because of the cold. And so that's where the look came from. And yeah, exactly like you said, he was an eater of children. And I guess this is all explained in about 15 seconds.
Yeah.
Basically what it comes down to is eventually people forgot about him, and for whatever reason, then because he was forgotten, I guess he was no longer an immediate threat, and the whole image of the clown took on a new meaning, and it became this fun thing for kids. As he's finishing up this story, Kent is getting very sleepy, and it becomes really apparent that he's been drugged. When he wakes up, he's tied to a table, and Carlson, oh no, the drugs are supposed to keep you out for a lot longer. And he says, decapitation is the only way to stop the demon. And you can tell that he's planning on cutting Kent's head off. And he says, and I really liked this, I thought it was clever. He says, it's not a costume, it's skin and hair of a demon. And I don't know, we've probably seen, we've seen things where people put on masks and the masks have effects on them and stuff. But the idea of this demon, having this MO where its skin is made to look like a costume, so somebody will put it on and then the demon can inhabit them. I thought that was kind of clever. I liked it.
Yeah, that was clever. And also, again, it rose a few questions in my head, like, where in this clown legend did they kill the demon and skin it? All that. Like, how did all that kind of go? But anyway, yeah, you're right. It was clever. It was interesting. And when you look again at the clown suit, you can see, yeah, again, it looked scaly and gross. Like I never would have put it on in the first place.
Right.
I thought this was a real Eli Roth moment, right, in the movie. Like, you could tell these guys really liked him when he's – and again, this is where it gets kind of funny, where he's like, oh, I thought the drugs should have kept you out, through your decapitation. But anyway, we're going to go through with it now.
Right. But it doesn't happen because Kent apparently has super strength now, so he breaks free of his bonds. And this was kind of funny. He races home and he runs in and he's freaking out and he's like, "We got to get to the police! We got to get to the police! This guy tried to kill me!" And he turns around and his wife is sitting there like with the in-laws, like her dad and I guess maybe her sister and brother-in-law or something. And of course, they all think he's nuts because he looks nuts. He's dressed up in this ratty clown suit and he's freaking out and he's telling this big story about how some guy's trying to cut his head off. And I thought that it was funny. They're like, he shows the wife, look, he chopped me up with a butcher knife and he's got this big gash in his shoulder. And she's like, well, where is the guy? And so he takes him outside and he's just got Carlson like tied up in a blanket in the backseat of the car. Oh man, which was, I thought, pretty funny. I didn't know exactly what he was planning to do. And the wife, even he's like, we got to go to the police, and she's like, well, what are we going to tell them? They object, and I feel like that one of the men who's there, it's not Meg's dad, it's just I guess another in-law, like grabs Kent, and Kent grabs him by the arm and like inadvertently, but because he's so strong, breaks his arm. And so then Kent just goes off by himself and in the car, and he's speeding along. But then I feel like Carlson starts trying to fight him from the back seat. Yeah. Meanwhile, he's going through this transformation where like his fingers are getting elongating and like becoming more claw-like, and his feet are growing larger and bursting out of his shoes. They end up crashing the car, and I thought Carlson died, but he shows back up later. But before Kent flees the scene, Carlson tells him, "You've got to kill yourself. It's the only way. You've got to kill yourself before you completely lose control." He runs off kind of into the woods. Then things happen so quickly. Like there's a Boy Scout camp. Yeah, there's a Cub Scout camp, and like one of the Cub Scouts has to go out into the woods to clean off his plate, and he's like shining his flashlight around, and the flashlight lands on Kent, which is really one of the only kind of scary moments, or at least jump scare moments. And Kent says, "Do you have any food? I just want food." And the kid tries to hand him like some cookies or something, but Kent grabs the kid's hand and bites his fingers off. So apparently Kent is developing this appetite for kids, and he can't control it. And then he just kind of runs around for a while.
Well, this is where I thought it got really, really funny. Like, of course, he runs into a Cub Scout, right? After he's transformed, there's a Boy Scout that he gets to bite the hand off. And then he runs into a gas station bathroom. And what happens? But like a bus full of students or something pulls up, and they all get out. And it's like, all right, guys, you're in there for 10 minutes, and then we're getting back on the road. And you're right. It's just a whole bunch of back and forth. There's him kind of hiding, or him kind of acting. The dog starts acting crazy, and then Kent calls his wife at some point in here, and it sounds like a suicide message. He says, "I'm sorry, this is the only way." And he's got a gun, and he sits down, and he puts the gun in his mouth, and he shoots it, and he blows his, the back of his head off. And actually, and it's funny because the spray against the wall is like multicolored.
I thought that was genius. It was. I didn't see it coming. And we're so used to that imagery of, the suicide blood splatter. And so I was expecting it to look like it always does. And the fact that it was all of these like pastel, it was almost like party confetti. I thought that was so clever. And of course, he's not going to be dead because the guy said, you got to decapitate yourself.
Exactly. Except I did actually look at the time on the movie at that point. I was like, okay, so this seems to be kind of an arc here. He's probably not going to be dead, and I looked at we had a whole hour left to go.
Yeah.
And I was like, wow, where is it going to go for this next hour? I guess he's going to keep transforming, but we're only a third of the way through the movie, and it still felt like ages had gone by.
Yeah. Yeah, and the next part, I mean, it's just kind of long. The suicide doesn't work, so he goes saw shopping. And then he goes back to this, like, I guess this is like a motel room that he's working on or something. I didn't really understand that. His wife knows that he might be there because she finds him there later, but it doesn't really matter. All that matters is there's this little kid who keeps bugging him.
Are you a clown? My name's Robbie. What's your name? Whoa, you're really hungry. If you want to eat, I got some Cookie Crisp and waffle and Cinnamon Toast Crunch and chocolate chips and some jelly beans and some beef jerky and a Lunchable and some cookies and grilled cheese and fries.
Stay away.
He sets the saws up so that if he puts a chair down in front or in front of the saws, and his plan, I guess, is that he's going to lean back in the chair until he falls back, and then the saws will decapitate him. He's hesitant, like he kind of false starts a couple times, but then it looks like he's going to do it, but right at the last second, the door flies open, and it's this nosy kid again. He fell back, and he kind of fell wonky, and because of that, it like disturbed the saws, and they fell, and one of them broke, and the saw blade shot right through the little kid and killed him. And then we don't see it happen, but it's implied that Kent eats the kid. And it was at that point that I realized, okay, they're really going to go there. This guy's going to be a child murderer. And over the course of the next half hour or so, he kills several more kids in pretty brutal ways. And it's not that I enjoy seeing children suffer or be killed on screen, but I did think it was pretty ballsy that they're just like, yep, we're doing it. We're going there. We're killing cute little kids.
Yeah, I actually appreciated that about this movie. Again, movies don't often go there. Why not? It's a horror movie. You show absolutely every other horrible thing you can. Why not show kids getting eaten? You know, that's kind of where I stand on this whole thing.
Right.
But
Yep.
But at some point here, then she finds him, and I still don't quite understand why she went to this motel, and I also don't understand how she found his room so quickly. It's like she's wandering outside there, knocking on random doors or something, and she hears him through the door, and she starts talking through the door. Was there anything?
She had a list of the properties that he was working on. I don't know why a realtor would be working on a lone motel room. It doesn't really make any sense to me. But so no, I don't know. I don't know what the answer is. But she does find him, and they have kind of this sad conversation through the door where she says, you know, I want you to be okay. I just want you to come home. And she confesses that she's pregnant, and he says, take me home. And she opens the door, and we don't see him. All we see is her reaction to him. And it's really good. It's good in the acting because she is obviously horrified by what she sees, but at the same time, it's her husband. You know, it's not like she doesn't run away shrieking in fear. She wants to help. She realizes now that what he's been saying, that something is wrong with this costume, it's doing something to him. She realizes that it's true, and she wants to help. They go home, and she chains him up in the basement, and he says, you've got to keep me down here, and no matter what I say, you can't let me out. And so then it's her turn to kind of start doing some research, and she goes back to that original property, and she finds this weird chair that's like bolted to the floor. And then she finds this old VHS camcorder, and of course the tape is still in there. So she's able to watch what was recorded.
And apparently the battery to the camcorder is still fully charged and operational.
Right.
Well, maybe it was plugged into the wall. Who knows? But
okay. So she looks through the lens, and at first she just kind of sees the empty chair, and then somebody kind of walks by frame, and that kind of gives her a start. But then she either rewinds or fast forwards, and she sees this demon strapped into this chair, and it's just straight up demon. It doesn't look like clown suit anymore. It looks, very much like a very scary demon. And I really liked the effect. We're seeing it through the lens of this camera, and it's kind of in shades of blue. It's really low quality, almost like it was maybe shot in the dark or something. And I thought that really kind of added to the mystique and scariness of the demon. If we had seen it in more sharp focus, it might not have been as scary. But she knows what she's dealing with at this point. Meanwhile, Jack, the son, is getting bullied at school. So he runs home, and Kent calls to him from the basement, and it's really ominous and scary because Kent's being really nice and saying, come talk to daddy. Mommy said it's okay. And the kid goes down there, and they have this conversation.
At school, some kids tried to put paste on my face. They're always doing that stuff.
Who is?
Colton.
You know what I did when I was bullied? I hid so that they couldn't find me. And then, after a while, you know what happened?
They left you alone.
Jack, you know where the bolt cutters are.
And then it cuts back to Meg, who gets a call from her friend who is supposed to pick Jack up, and Jack's not there. So she's racing home. And I didn't know. I was fairly certain that she was going to find her kid having been eaten. But no, she goes home and the kid's okay, but Kent is gone. And then we get another pretty brutal scene.
Yeah, so it turns out Kent went to the house, and I actually like this bit because so for all the landline phones and the yellow pages that we had before, suddenly we are kind of acknowledging a bit of the modern, and this kid is playing, I guess, on his Xbox or something with his friends. And nowadays, when you play Xbox with your friends, none of you are in the same room. You're all in your different houses, and you've got these headsets on, and you're chatting with each other. And there's one thing that, now I honestly don't play these multiplayer games. I like playing games, but I don't like playing with other people online because most people are dicks.
Yeah.
But this movie pretty much highlights that. And if you know anything about this sort of scene, you know that kids are really nasty to each other, and this kid is no different. He's one of these kids, and they're trash talking back and forth. They got this totally foul language, and the kid has to get up because he hears something in the house, and he walks around. In the meantime, the other kids, we still hear kind of the soundtrack through his headset, which he set down on the counter, and as the clown comes into the house and faces this kid down. In the meantime, the others are in the background going, oh, yeah, well, Carlson, he told Jack today, blah, blah, blah. And they're basically retelling the story of how he bullied Jack while his dad is facing him down in this, as a demon. Like, I don't know, it must be like a chunk of his head or a piece of his body flies and hits the screen. Blood splattering.
Blood everywhere. Yeah.
Again, like another total Eli Roth moment. But again, this is where it gets a little tonally weird because we've been, kind of alternating between these really funny kind of scenes, and yet we're also getting these pretty horrifying scenarios where most horror movies dare not tread. This violence towards children thing. No matter how bad a bully is, nobody's in their right mind when they're, 12 years old. And
right.
They don't deserve that kind of treatment. And so it's pretty brutal. Now, again, I'm fine with it personally, but it does throw off the movie. You really don't know how to feel. And honestly, to my mind, it's still not scary.
Yeah. I know what you mean, and it should be because it's pretty brutal, and at this point, the Kent the demon is pretty menacing. But you're right. I don't know. It's that weird imbalance because it should be kind of fun. Like it's like retribution. Like haha, this kid's getting what he deserves. But at the same time, like, well, he's just a kid.
Yeah.
So I don't know. It's a mixed bag. Well, then it cuts back to the family home, and Meg, the mom, is confronted by the dog, who is now a demon dog and kind of has a clown face of his own. And just as the dog's about to attack, Carlson shows up and chops the dog's head off. and the dog's body kind of flails around for a minute in front of Jack, which I thought was a good touch. Like, this poor kid is being traumatized. But then Carlson tells Meg the same thing that he told Kent. He's got to be decapitated. He's got to be killed. It's the only way. But somewhere along the lines, Meg had also looked through this book that Kent had found with the costume, and it was about the demon and whatnot. And there were all these pictures stuck in there. And one of the pictures was of Carlson in the clown suit. And so she says, I know that, there's more than one way to get it off because you got it off at some point. He gives the backstory at some point and says, I found this costume. I put it on. My brother was a doctor and he worked in a children's cancer ward, and I thought that I could help cheer up the kids. And there's these pictures of him like trying to cheer up the kids and whatnot. He says, but then the transformation started, and somehow, I don't know how they figured it out, but they figured out that if they gave him, the demon, 5 kids, then Carlson would be released. And so the the doctor brother smuggled 5 kids who were very close to death out and fed them to the clown, and that's how Carlson was able to escape. And there, again, so many loose ends. Like, what? How would that happen? Like nobody noticed 5 kids just went missing. And that's the same thing, some crazy person dressed as a clown bit a kid's fingers off in the woods, and nobody heard about that. It wasn't on the news. The cops weren't involved. He ate this little kid in the motel. Where were this kid's parents? This kid lived alone in the motel, I guess. At some point, Carlson and Meg go to Colton's house and find Colton's body. And it's like, where are his parents? There's this whole string of dead children and mutilated children all over town.
But that's kind of the inherent problem with doing a movie like this about kids, is because unlike adults can go missing, right? And maybe it could plausibly take a while to find them, but kids are monitored, most of the time. So yeah, it's even more implausible, and you've kind of got to address that, and they really don't at all.
Yeah, just about as implausible as a costume turning you into a clown demon, I suppose. So I guess,
yeah. Well, you got to go with it at some point.
Shouldn't read too much into it.
For sure.
Well, so this leads then into the final act, which was my favorite. Carlson and Meg are working together now, and they think, where would a clown go where he could be relatively unnoticed? And so they go to Chuck E. Cheese. And I loved this scene. I thought this scene I actually thought was really scary. Yeah. And I love when movies can take something that is totally mundane and non-threatening, and even, something that's like joyous and celebratory, and make it completely ominous. And she's walking around this Chuck E. Cheese and just knowing that this clown is in there somewhere, and there are so many places that he could be in the shadows or hiding. It was really cool. And at some point, a kid falls into the ball pit and says, "Ooh, somebody peed in here." But he gets out, and you see that the back of his jeans are actually blood stained. Mm-hmm. And then you see this other kid looking for his brother in one of those big play places, like those tunnel crawl throughs. And eventually he crawls in there, and we get all this whole brief scene of him crawling around in the tunnels, and it's so scary. And eventually he does find the clown who has his brother, but he's able to get his brother away. But then that kid ends up getting brutally killed, and blood in it, I feel like a limb comes sliding down the slide, at which everybody sees. And then it's just total chaos in this place, and everybody's trying to get their kids out. And they do, but Meg is still in there. So then she goes into this really cool, black light forest, and she finds Kent, who is now almost entirely demon. And Kent can kind of talk to her a little bit, but then the demon kind of takes over.
Bring me one more child, and you can have your husband back. Bring out! Perhaps I'll find another. What's his name? Ah, yes. Jack.
The cops are bursting in, and the clown takes off, and so she sneaks out, leaving Carlson there to take the rap for these murders that have just taken place. And she goes out into the parking lot, and she's looking around, and there's all these kids, and I feel like it's kind of in slow motion. She's looking around, and all these kids are running by, and it's like she realizes, I could nab one of these kids. And she almost does, but then the kid's mom shows up, and so she's just sitting in her car, and a kid comes to her and says, "You work at the dentist office. You were always really nice. I was at this birthday party, but now I can't find anybody. Can you please take me home?" And of course, this is her perfect opportunity.
Yeah, and I'll have to say this whole scene, now I liked the fact that stylistically it was really cool that she ends up in this blacklight mini golf course in the Chuck E. Cheese that's also done up like a forest. It's like this demon's back in his forest element or whatever, which was really neat. But at this point, again, the movie kind of changes a bit. Now, first of all, it's really, we're not The Fly anymore. We haven't been for a little while. We've kind of dropped the idea of Jack's transformation and him fighting this thing. It's just full on demon, and so we kind of forget about the fact that this is Jack, except for the fact that I guess she thinks that if she can get this other kid, that he'll be back to normal. But at the same time, this is a guy who's just been running around eating kids on his own. So why he would need to make a bargain with her to bring him one more child is a little silly.
Right.
He can get another kid.
Right.
He just burst out. He's pretty much invincible. He can just burst out into the parking lot and eat as many kids as he wants and jump away. Or he didn't have to be so deliberate about, getting the others in the bouncy house. So it's just like, I was kind of at this point in the movie, I'm going, okay, now it's going to be another half an hour. And it really is. It's like at that point, you've still got almost 20 minutes left of the movie. And I'm thinking, how far can this movie go? And, by the way, I really did like that sequence, by the way. Now, again, putting aside the fact that most Chuck E. Cheeses are super brightly lit.
Yeah.
And this one had way too much shadow, and it was convenient when, suddenly this really, really busy area was suddenly devoid of kids so they could have the suspenseful scene.
Right.
It was neat how they were clearly channeling, Alien, with them crawling through, the ductwork, and especially that creepy moment where the girl pops in and says, "Don't go up there."
Yeah. Oh, I loved that whole sequence. I thought it was good, and I thought it was really suspenseful. But you're right. At this point, why would this demon be making deals, period? Why would he be conceding to anything? Is he eager to get back into costume form? Why wouldn't he just take over this guy forever and just keep eating kids forever? It doesn't really make any sense.
He's not chained to a chair.
Right. Yeah. But anyway, so she takes the girl to where she's supposed to meet the demon or whatever, but at the last second she chickens out, and because she chickens out, she knows that the demon's going to be going after Jack, so she goes back home where Jack isn't even supposed to be. This dumbass grandpa who's been a dumbass through the whole movie takes the kid back home, which is so stupid. And eventually she gets there, and the dad says everything's okay. The grandpa had found blood, and he's like, "I'm going to help you out. I don't know what Kent did, but I don't care. You're my daughter. I'm going to make sure you're not implicated in this." And then, of course, immediately the clown rips his face off, and he's dead.
But that's so against his character. I mean, that made no sense, because the whole time through the movie, which we haven't mentioned, but he's trying to convince her the guy's bad. You kind of he's going crazy. You need to kind of leave him. You need to kind of get away. Why don't you and Jack come and stay with me? So why he's just not you need to get out of here. I told you so. Let's call the cops. It didn't make any sense.
No, it was clunky. I mean, what he says is, "I just want to make sure that you're not implicated in any of this." But you're right. Just why would you think that? Why wouldn't you just get her out? Why would she be implicated?
Right.
But it doesn't matter. He's dead. And so then it becomes the demon chasing the wife, Meg, and Jack around the house. He fights with Meg a lot, and there's a lot of fighting going on. I have to say also that all of this is really, really dark. Watch this movie in the dark. I always watch these movies during the daytime, and it's such a mistake because I can't see, what's going on. But it's a lot of chasing around. Eventually, he gets her pinned up against a wall, and apparently either he remembers because she told him, or he can sense that she's pregnant, and he starts pushing his hand up against her abdomen, and I feel like one of his claws even penetrates her skin a little bit. But then he gets distracted by Jack, and so he chases Jack around for a while, and he gets Jack cornered in a closet, but he can't get in there entirely. And then somehow Meg gets a chain. Well, she slashes him with a knife at some point, and she slashes his throat. So there's this gash in his throat. Somehow, as he's trying to get Jack in the closet, she's able to get a chain around his neck, and she kind of pulls him back, so he's chained there. And at that point, I feel like she's going to kill him, but he reverts back to Kent's voice and says, "Help me." And so she turns to Jack, and she's like, "Go get that book. Maybe we can still help Daddy." And the kid says, "That's not Daddy," which I thought was good. And so then the demon jumps up and charges at them, but is still chained around his neck. And she takes the sledgehammer and just knocks his head off. The chain slices through that gash that's already in his neck, and he's laying there with his head hanging off. I knew that he wasn't going to be dead yet, because there was just a little tiny bit still attached, it was kind of hanging there by his skull. And of course you get that moment where Jack and Meg are like embracing one another, and then the demon jumps up again and she has to grab his head and rip it all the way off. And then she drops the head and the demon starts to melt away. And again, you see Kent's face underneath. So I guess, and then that's pretty much it. Then you see scenes of the costume getting packed up into evidence bags, and that's the last shot. You just see, the costume in these evidence bags, which, implies that, oh no, somebody else could put it back on or whatever. I tried to kind of speed through the ending there because there were things that I wanted to talk about thematically. But how did you feel about the end?
Yeah, I guess the nice thing about it was the movie doesn't really pull any punches. It is brutal and bloody throughout, if you're into that, and it's not the low-budget affair. There's a lot of gore. The special effects are really good. The parts that you can see anyway, like you said, it gets pretty dark for a lot of that. Yeah, I mean, at some point, I was thinking, how can this movie possibly end well for anybody? And it really doesn't.
Right.
And I guess I like that, too. I like that aspect. I mean, it's not like Jack got saved at the last minute. He's gone. And again, when that sort of thing happens in The Fly, it feels really tragic and sad. And here, too, I was thinking, yeah, this guy didn't deserve any of this. Like, he absolutely was just a total victim to this. And it didn't really pull all of the heartstrings it probably could have with them, sort of knowingly just killing their own father, because he's not like he said, like the kid said, that's not Dad. He's not there anymore. And we never got that kind of emotional closure from the family. I don't know. How much could you really throw in there? How much is really absolutely necessary? But it does basically cut that off at the legs, that whole notion that this is kind of a Fly story, this tragic thing. It starts out that way, and then it just kind of fizzles out and just becomes he's possessed by a demon, he's got to go too. Again, uneven maybe is the best way to put it. It's like the movie really didn't know what kind of movie it wanted to be, and so it's hard to emotionally respond to that. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I kind of feel the same way. I'm kind of hot and cold with it. I kind of liked the concept. It was interesting. Interestingly enough, another movie came out in 2012 called Scary or Die, and it was a anthology film, and there was like 5 shorts, and one of them was about a guy who was played by Corbin Bleu, who was at a birthday party for his little brother or sister, and this scary clown stumbled in and started, causing havoc and bit him, and then he like turns into a zombie clown. Like he starts turning into a clown and he wants to eat kids and stuff too. Really kind of shockingly similar, but they were filmed the same year. So even though Clown came out, a couple of years later, surprisingly similar, and it reminded me of that a lot. Critically, this movie, it's kind of like you and I, we don't really know where to go with it. The reviews were mixed. It got some really, really positive reviews, and some kind of mediocre reviews and some negative ones. One of the more interesting reviews that I saw, and it was interesting to me because I hadn't thought of it at all, but this critic viewed the movie as a metaphor for a man struggling with pedophilia or an impulse towards pedophilia and trying to deal with that and deal with having an outlet for that and not wanting it to affect his own family or his own child. And I hadn't thought of that at all. And I really, really, really doubt that that's what they were going for. Yeah. But it kind of shed a new light on it for me, instead of it being a literal demon, a guy, just this, seemingly normal guy struggling with inner demons and predatory instincts. And I don't know. I just found that kind of fascinating. Again, I doubt that was their intent at all. But for me, it made me think about the movie more.
Well, that is interesting, although you're absolutely right. There's no evidence for it, really. I mean, we see so little of the guy in the beginning, and we get no sense of any of this before he starts. Again, to be a metaphor, you don't have to. You don't have to get it, I guess, at the beginning. But yeah, it's a little too B-movie at times. It's a little too goofy to be that smart.
To be taken so seriously. Right,
yeah.
Sure.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, it wasn't a bad film at all. I can see why probably people didn't respond to it too well, just like you and I. You kind of walk away from it and go, yeah, he was entertaining at parts. There were parts where, the bloodlust kind of kicks in and you're like, yeah, wow, that was really sweet. Or, man, I can't believe they went there. That scene at the Chuck E. Cheese is quite good. But as a whole, as just a whole movie, I seriously, I was kind of checking the time the whole way through, because maybe there wasn't enough foreshadowing, maybe it wasn't formulaic enough, or maybe it was following. I think it was following too many different formulas. Maybe that there were so many times when I thought, okay, it's going here and it's going to end soon, and it didn't.
Yeah, and it could have, like it just seemed like it was such a linear plot. Like you could have cut out a third or more of it, and you wouldn't have lost anything except some gore.
For sure.
There was a progression of his going from Kent to this demon full on, but it was kind of drawn out longer than it needed to be. They were going for a feature-length film, but it's an hour 40. I think they could have shaved off a good 20 minutes, and maybe it would have been a little bit more tight. But I'm not complaining too much. It was entertaining. It was a little long, but I wasn't bored. And that third act for me, with the Chuck E. Cheese stuff, that kind of was worth the price of admission for me, because I really, really liked that scene.
Again, it had kind of the stamp of Eli Roth on it a little bit. You could see that these guys were obviously inspired by him. It had some of the comedy in there, but maybe not enough. It was trying to go for scary, but it never quite reached it for me. I really like the idea of that being a metaphor for pedophilia. I really do. As much as I hate the idea that it seems like people who are clowns or who are magicians or are children's entertainers in general nowadays kind of get suspected of that.
Yeah.
As a guy who enjoys doing that kind of thing and likes kids and stuff, I have to admit, like, I personally have been a little more cautious and maybe kind of quit doing a lot of that, just because I've realized that, just the way the zeitgeist is right now, that people are overly sensitive towards, overly suspicious, I should say, of people who just like to hang out and be nice to kids,
right?
And do things for them. That it becomes, you just kind of walk a dangerous walk all of a sudden. And so, it would bother me if that were the intent of the movie, but I really don't think it was at all. At the end of the day, I'm glad we watched it. It was really interesting. I can see where it struggled to find an audience. I'm not quite sure why it was so buried by the studio, because we've seen much worse. It's a mystery to me why I'm watching this now, and I really hadn't heard of it before. Well, thank you again for listening. If you enjoyed this episode, please share it with a friend. You can find us on iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play, and wherever your favorite podcasts are. You can also find us on Facebook, where you can like our page. Let us know what you thought of this episode and this film. And also, please suggest future films for us to watch. Until that day, I'm Todd.
And I'm Craig.
With Two Guys and a Chainsaw.